Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, February 10th, 2020. Thank you for tuning in to the evening edition of the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Tonight, our space weather, we'll start off with some solar wind speeds at 410.8 kilometers per second with a density of 9.8. This is also now 8 days in a row now without sunspots. 24 days without sunspots in 2020, and it all looks pretty quiet right now. KP is at 2 with a 24-hour max at a 2. Our TCI is at a 3.42, and that is due to the increased solar winds that we've had over the past several days. Tomorrow and also Wednesday, we will expect more increased solar wind from a coronal hole that is turning away from Earth, but we are now looking at the possibility of another coronal hole Earth facing, more of a direct connection, if you might. We'll talk about that later as well, but we are watching possible increased solar winds from that, maybe by late weekend. So a little bit of solar weather to talk about, mainly right now. The number one story that I'd like to kind of start off with space weather is that the cosmic ray doses, I was talking about that earlier today, it is at 11.1%. Now the record is 11.7%, and that was back in December of 2009. So here we are, exactly 11 years from the date that we set this space age record. We always talk about these solar cycles being 11 and a half years long, and we are facing that somewhere around April, May. So we are still in that window of breaking a space age record on the cosmic rays in our atmosphere. So watching that stat is starting to go up and down, but here lately it has pierced the 11.1 percentage, and just kind of wanted to throw that out there tonight. Also, let's go over to the grandsolarminimum.com. We will check out any chances of some solar wind as far as these smaller coronal holes that you see across your screen. You know, nothing real serious. This one might be the next coronal hole that we face. Another little one here. So not quite dead on the center of the equatorial region, but close enough to where we will see effects from those coronal holes as well. More increased solar wind. Not quite sure if we're going to see any kind of G1 geomagnetic type of activity related to these coronal holes. Not sure. We'll have to see with this next one coming up. Now, we did have increased speeds of around 600, and Mari was telling me that is the highest so far in 2020. Was that 600 reading?
Yeah,
yep.
It was the highest of 2020.
And my memory's failing me. What night was that? That was a couple nights ago.
Well, Thursday night, I think.
Thursday night. So increased solar winds pounding our magnetosphere, and I can tell you that Northeast got hit hard with a snowstorm that I believe overperformed in the first place. So was it a coincidence that our solar winds were bringing in highly charged particles in our atmosphere at a high rate at the time? You be the judge. But it happened, and that is probably a direct correlation on why this storm did overperform. But looking at our future cast on the sun, well, we got a couple of bright spots, but nothing that qualifies it to be watched for a sunspot. So we are looking at possibility of several days in a row without sunspots here in February, possibly into March. It just depends here on the rogue activity that we have seen so far, as we are starting to see signs of solar cycle 25 arrive as well. But you know, we talk a lot about what conditions qualify the sun for minimum type conditions, and one of those things is these geomagnetic storms, that they decrease in strength as we get deeper into the minimum. And I'm bringing this up tonight is because we haven't seen a G1 geomagnetic storm in quite some time, which would tell me that we are right at that minimum part, the deep part of the minimum, however. before we start to see the G1s return and then the G2s. And once we start seeing more G3s and G4s, we know we're getting closer to our maximum period. So I also just wanted to point that out with folks out there that don't understand grand solar minimums and solar minimums, period. These things happen in levels, just like on these charts that we show you guys constantly. I've never seen it break cycle. So at least a few more months of deep minimum conditions, maybe a little over a year, is possible, is where I'm going with this, before we start to see things maybe start kicking up in late 2022 and 2023 as we head towards a new solar max. Now, solar max in solar cycle 25 is going to be weak. NASA is being generous by saying a smooth sunspot number of 115. I've seen others calling it around 91, some even going as low as around 67. I believe the solar cycle 24 was around 140. So even at 115, we're still down from solar cycle 25, or solar cycle 24, I should say. Not a whole lot down, but still continuing to see this downward trend in these solar cycles from 23 to 24, and now what is becoming 25 within the next couple of years. We will see solar cycle 25 alive and well, but just not the normal max that we're used to. All right, let's take a look at some headlines across the world. First, we'll start here. Very heavy rains in New South Wales extinguish mega fire and trigger widespread flooding in Australia. I mean, you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. Very heavy rains hit New South Wales over the past couple of days, causing widespread flooding, cutting power to about 100,000 homes, but also extinguishing more than 30 fires. So there's the good news, including one dubbed mega fire. Thousands of residents were ordered to evacuate Sunday night, February 9th, amid fears of rising floodwaters. In 24 hours, 9 local time on February 10th, much of central and southern coast saw well over 7.8 inches of rain, with most registered in Rogers with 17.06 inches of rain, Guatemala 16.48 inches of rain, Robertson recorded 15.6 inches of rain, and over the past 4 days, some places have had between 23 and 27 inches of rain. Folks, I mean, the cosmic ray dosage is up in our atmosphere, near record levels. We've had increased solar wind, which has brought in more cosmic rays into our atmosphere, more highly charged particles. So we talk about the storm that overperformed last weekend, and we are talking about this rain right now that we're experiencing over the past 4 days. 27 inches of rain. 27 and a half, I'm sorry. 23.6 to 27 and a half. The science is on the side of what we're trying to say here, guys. Increased galactic cosmic rays in our atmosphere. Highly charged particles produce heavier precipitation rates. And we have seen tons of moisture all over the world this year, not just here in the US, but I mean, this, like the only silver lining to this situation is that it put out a mega fire. It says here, on a lighter note, the National Weather Service Rural Fire Services announced on Monday as well that the rain since Friday have helped firefighters put out more than 30 fires, including some that had been burning for weeks or even months. This is the most positive news we've had in some time, claims an official from the National Weather Service out there. A severe weather warning for heavy rain, high winds, and large waves have been issued along the entire coast from the northern rivers to the south coast. The rain was Sydney's heaviest in 30 years. According to Jane Golding, we haven't seen anything like this since the late 1990s, which was the last, that was a solar minimum, late 90s, 96, 97, 98. And that was not as deep as the one in solar cycle 24. 23 was a deep minimum, but nowhere near the size or the low solar activity that we experienced in 24. And so far what we could see in solar cycle 25. All right, moving along here on the watchers. Well, powerful windstorm wreaks havoc across northwestern Europe, causes widespread disruption and flooding. A powerful windstorm named Ciara by the UK Met Office hit Ireland and the United Kingdom on Saturday, February 8th, 2020. Parts of northwestern Europe on Sunday, bringing very strong winds and heavy rain. As of Monday morning, February 10th, the storm claimed at least 5 lives, 1 in the UK, 2 in Poland, 1 in Sweden, and 1 in Slovenia. This is the third named storm of this 2019-2020 European windstorm season. Its full force was felt on Sunday, cutting off power to more than 137,000 customers in the UK, and Hastings crews used a helicopter and a lifeboat to save a surfer who had been missing at rough seas. Travel has been disrupted across the northwestern Europe, with many airlines canceling flights, as well as several rail firms advising passengers to avoid travel in the wake of the powerful storm. Ferries also faced delays and cancellations, with drivers being warned to take safety measures. Hundreds of flights from London to Heathrow Airport were canceled, while a flight from Geneva, Switzerland had to be rerouted to Lyon, France. So far, the Cairngorm Mountains reported the highest gust at 190 kilometers per hour. That's 118 miles per hour for you folks here in the U.S. Wales has also been hit by the most powerful wind at 93 miles per hour. I heard somewhere in California, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you heard this as well, but there was a 200 mile an hour wind gust recorded. And you didn't see that?
I've heard high winds, but I didn't see the actual speed.
Now, that was at high elevations, obviously. It wasn't somewhere in, a rural area, anything like that. In Hampshire, southern England, a 50-year-old man died after a tree fell on his car in Hampshire in the wake of the storm. According to the police, the man was driving on the A33 when the accident occurred. And let me tell you, driving along the Northway today, we saw many trees and branches leaning from the heavy snow that we've received up here since Thursday. And we've had snow, ice, snow, rain, and then snow again. And the weight of the water that's trapped inside this snow, that pretty good pile of it here. But some of the stuff stuck really well to the tree branches. And I mean, we were driving down the highway and it looked like that the trees were forming a roof. They're leaning that far. And the fear is that some of these larger limbs have already snapped off and they're on the side of the highway. But some of these are pretty large. And if those snap, well, that would just cause absolute chaos on the Northway if these trees cannot handle this weight. So we will wait and see as we have more weather alerts coming our way for more snow possibility. Stay tuned. Deadly winter storm spawns 19 tornadoes, causes major flooding and power outages after affecting 300,000 across the eastern U.S. This is just a bit of a recap, really. On Friday, February 7th, more than 300,000 homes and businesses were left without power as the storm caused widespread outages, with North Carolina bearing the brunt, followed by Pennsylvania, according to PowerOutage.us. There were the states under high wind and winter weather advisories issued by the National Weather System. On Saturday, February 8th, the eastern region reported 18 twisters. Across the region from Thursday to Friday, February 6th to 7th, this includes 2 EF2s, 8 EF1s, and 7 EF0s. Again, minor tornadoes. The 2 EF2s, that's a little impressive for this time of year as well. On Sunday, 2 more tornadoes were confirmed, bringing overall the count to 19. Actually, I heard it was closer to 20. Maryland had 5. North Carolina had 8, 2 in South Carolina, and Georgia as well with 2, and 1 in each Virginia and Florida. Severe weather destroyed the mobile homes in Mississippi and Alabama, sparked mudslides, Tennessee, Kentucky, and inundated communities across the Appalachian region. It also claimed at least 5 lives. And lots of rain. Now, this leads me to my next part of our report tonight, and that is the concern for the flooding here. This is what we are seeing from basically yesterday till Valentine's Day. This is rainfall precipitation. That lighter orange is going to be in the 5 to 7 inch range, possibly reaching the 10 inch range in parts of Alabama and Mississippi. We are already talking about flood stages. We're also talking about a lot of moisture in a short period of time. And when you guys look at the GFS here in a little bit, we're going to see that we're already getting enough rain down in the south, and more is going to continue to fall. Also interesting, they show the snowfall totals so far, comparing it for normal snowfall. All right, some states are above and some are below. Normal snowfall through February 9th is 26.7 inches in Boston, Massachusetts. Right now, they're under that average at 14.9. But in Caribou, Maine, the average is 67.5, and they are sitting at 88.7. Rochester, New York is also above normal snowfall through this time of year by almost 10 inches. Syracuse is below by 25 inches. Burlington, Vermont is up a bit, 7 inches over the average. Buffalo, New York is down 14 inches. And you can see on this list here on the watchers how areas are lacking the snow this year, but some are in the surplus. Now, Mari might have to help me with this real quick. Maybe you can tell me where to go to get that.
For what?
That chart. I want to show this snow total so far for the northern hemisphere.
I could do that for you, Jake.
I really appreciate
I know
that,
all
man.
of our subscribers have missed me. Possibly more than you. I'm just going by what I'm seeing in the chat.
Wow.
I'm just joking.
Wow.
They missed you.
No, they didn't. You wouldn't have said that.
Anyway, everyone loves me. I know. I'm just joking. Here you go, Jake. Is that going to show up?
That's what I need.
Proper
Thank
fashion
you.
For you.
So
you might need to move it around.
Yeah, I'll move it around a little bit. But thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, well, we got to close it or go backwards. It's going to have to be like this. Here we go. So this red dotted here represents the snowfall, northern hemisphere. Okay. The blue is about the average. All right, the dotted line is average snow mass for globe snow, SWE. The years they're using is 1982 through 2012. And as you guys can see, we are once again creeping away from the average snowfall in the northern hemisphere. Last year, this number was shot through the roof a lot earlier, but again, it's not like winter missed us this year. We're still getting large amounts of snow in the northern hemisphere. And I've shared with you guys where. The Middle East right now is getting the brunt of it. Japan got a bunch of it. Russia's getting a bunch of it. Norway and Sweden is getting their fair share of it. Canada, obviously, in the Northwest for us. And we're going to see more snowfall across the United States here as we continue with our winter. It's only the middle of February. It's not even the middle of February. And we've got lots of systems to talk about here as well. But yeah, so lots of moisture, lots of rain, lots of snow, tornadoes. We had it all in this storm, and that will not stop. And I wanted to quickly talk about the ESA Solar Orbiter starts its 5-year mission to provide the unprecedented close-up observations of the sun. I thought the solar probe was doing that as well, but here we have another one. 20 years after the inception, 6 years of construction, and more than a year of testing, ESA's new sun-exploring spacecraft was successfully launched by the U.S. Atlas V411 rocket from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, Florida at 4:04 UTC on February 10th, 2020. Over the course of its planned 5-year mission, Solar Orbiter will reach the inclination of 17 degrees above and below the solar equator, or equator, I should say. The proposed extended mission would see it reach about 33% inclination. Solar Orbiter is an ESA-led mission with a strong NASA participation. The spacecraft will perform unprecedented close-up observations of the sun from high latitudes, providing the first image of the sun's uncharted polar regions. So we got the Parker solar probe doing the corona and the solar winds and particles and frequencies and wavelengths, and now we have the ESA, which is going to basically survey the northern and the poles, I should say the poles of the sun, which we don't have a lot of observation on right now. So interesting duo here that we have. The new spacecraft will also investigate how intense radiation and energetic particles being blasted out from the sun are carried by solar wind through the solar system impact our home planet to better understand and predict periods of stormy space weather. So it sounds like to me, why else would they want to follow space weather? Because they know it affects Earth's climate and actual weather as well. So as humans, we have always been familiar with the importance of the sun to life on Earth, observing it, investigating it, and how it works in detail. But we also long known it is potential to disrupt an everyday life should we be in the firing line of a powerful solar storm. By the end of our Solar Orbiter mission, we will know more about the hidden force responsible for the sun's changing behavior and its influence on our home planet than ever before. You guys can check out the video on watchers.news. Let you guys play that. But very exciting stuff, folks, that we are alive to see this. We're going to get real-time data now from the ESA and NASA to provide us with basically a look at the upper latitudes, lower latitudes, the poles of the sun, while the Parker Solar Probe continues to monitor as well solar wind, plasma ejections, the corona. So interesting stuff to be alive to actually witness, folks. To see the results, the real-time data flowing in and doing the analysis will be interesting as well. All right, let's go ahead and jump into some weather forecasting tonight. Actually, just looking at the models, that's all I'm doing. I don't really, these models change every time I look, and all of you know that. Sometimes we see flashes from GFS that shows us that there's going to be a disruptive storm early out, and then it actually comes to fruition because of some of the signs that we notice. But tonight, basically I'm going to show you guys the next few days that's coming up. We have multiple systems moving through the Midwest into the Northeast. This is that weekend storm that could produce 3 to 6 inches of snow. It is very possible this storm could overperform, as we will have solar wind bombarding our magnetic field with highly charged particles. By the weekend, the one thing that remains consistent with this forecast from this morning's forecast is that high pressure is definitely settling in after this storm over the weekend through Valentine's Day. Lots of cold air building up, and then another quick little hitter in the Northeast by Monday, before more rain in the South on Monday, more rain in the South on Tuesday, snow for the northern Great Lakes and the northern plains. All rain coming through on February 19th, as temperatures will be close to 40 degrees in some spots in New York. But more bad news for the South. And let's back this up, actually. Let's start all the way back over. Let's count how many systems. We're dealing with a major one right now. So here's one. There's two. A third one develops here by the 16th of February. Here's a fourth one by the 18th, so 2 days later. And that's almost like an atmospheric river at this point. This is going to be a multi-day event. Look at this. Starting all the way late February 17th through the Tuesday, through Wednesday, into Thursday. I mean, just an atmospheric river type situation here in the South of Mississippi and northern Mississippi, I should say, northwestern Mississippi. we need to really watch in this area, guys. More bad news. They've had tons of rain out there. South Carolina, over 5 to 7 inches of rain. And looking at Futurecast right now, more of the same. More winter weather. And yes, the mid-Atlantic states could see their first decent snow of the year. Also, Boston could get on some of this action. They are below average on their snowfall. So this little nor'easter possibility situation here at this current track, we could see snow for the I-95 corridor by February 20th, 21st, into the 22nd. This will escape the Northeast, and that is the first system that the Northeast gets to skip out on. But there's a little Alberta clipper as more cold air is reinforced into the area. 1-2 punch. Earlier, that second system was over Ohio. So the first one was over New York, which it still is. But now that second level low pressure system is more further east than it was early this morning. It was west. So the models have jogged that system over just a little bit. By Tuesday, February 25th, more snow for the Northeast. There's another big system coming down from Canada. Cold air. Look, the Great Lakes, the Northern Plains states, and the Northeast are going to experience probably the most winter weather over the next 3 to 4 weeks, if not longer. The jet stream, everything changes every day. We have seen several models that emphasize a lot of cold on the way, and then it changes the next day to some milder air. Here's some cold air after this next system that's coming through. We get that storm on Thursday, and behind it, some very, very frigid Arctic air for the Northeast, parts of the Northern Plains, and the Great Lakes. And it gets pretty cold. Not quite as cold as we've seen it earlier this year, where it's dipping down to the Panhandle. This goes down to about Middle Tennessee. By the 17th, things get a little bit more mild for the East, and the Midwest, Ohio, the Northeast, and the upper 30s. And then another shot of cold air coming in from Canada, pushing the milder air well south, keeping winter around the Northeast just a little while longer as well as we go into late February. And we're starting to see this cold pattern kind of sticking around the far northern part and the Northeast as well. So still a couple more weeks of winter-like conditions to come across the area, but the indications I'm getting here from this GFS is that we are going to see a shift in cold weather, and that's going to be, in my opinion, still around the Great Lakes, the far northeastern part of the Northern Plains, and still the Northeast. But milder weather is in store for you folks, Tennessee and south, but still plenty of cold Arctic air that will filter its way in between now and the end of this week, especially the coldest of the year coming here right in the middle of the month, which is kind of where we thought it was going to happen anyway, the middle of February. I know we kept talking about the middle of January for so long, but as late January came around the corner, we had to push this cold shot all the way back to the middle of February, with the chance of the Northeast still looking at much colder air for the rest of the winter versus the rest of the country, as we see lots of 40s and 50s across most of the United States. But by February 26th, we will see some more 20s and 30s across the Ohio region. So winter is not quite over, and still a lot can change in between now and then. And I was going to bring Mari in to say hello to everybody as I'm getting now to the forecasts. We're going to go around the world here in a couple of minutes. And also starting to see some blues for you folks out there in the UK. We haven't seen a lot of snow yet this year, and hey, that's fine. Get a little break from those harsh winters that we've seen. Lots of people died from the cold weather, and this is probably a little bit of a relief for some of you out there who have seen some pretty harsh winters the last couple of years. Let's take a look at some of the temperature readings that we'll be seeing to our friends here across the pond in the European nations and the UK. Mari, did you want to say hi to anybody? Or?
Yeah. Are we there yet?
We are there.
We're here. A couple of people have said they've actually gotten kicked out of our show tonight, and like when they get booted back on, they have to look at adverts. So
we apologize.
I'm sorry about that. I had to run back and get a cough drop. I have a touch of bronchitis right now. Believe it or not, it sucks. Doug said something funny. He said, not exactly bikini weather. Isn't it funny?
Yes.
So, Doug, thank you. Sam says, great show, guys. Thanks. Edward Thompson, hello, fellow GSM believers, newbie here. So everyone, welcome Edward to the gang. And he called you Jake from State Farm. And Hacksaw wanted to know what the green thing was next to people's names. That's for the membership, the paid subscribers. And all you have to do is click the join button and you can join and get all the goofy emoticons and all that.
All right.
That's all my voice can handle right now, Jake.
That's understandable. As well as mine, I feel like I'm getting under the weather as well. My allergies have been kind of driving me crazy. I think it might be just travel. But here's to take a look at some of the weather in Australia and some relief to those areas that are having fires. Hopefully this rain is helping putting this out as well. Taking a look at South America quickly here across the middle part of the country. Very active, tons of storms. This area also is still looking at snow in the higher elevations. Again, this is the middle of their winter, so again, let's move across the country. Here's Northern Africa for you. Of course, it's hot and dry, unfortunately for you folks. Not a lot to report as far as moisture at this point. And go ahead and take a look at this. Is the forecast for South Africa. Obviously a lot different picture here in the southern part of this continent. And the Middle East. I tried to get as a wide of a picture here. This also includes China, the Asian nations as well. And, you know, we all know what's happening out there. Our thoughts and prayers for those folks in China. And we hope there's a way that this virus can be contained at some point. That's a look at our snowfall here towards the end of the month. Again, not as impressive as we saw this morning, but we will continue to monitor these changes as this continues to change over the next several hours. Just like I said 12 hours ago, we were looking at over a foot in the capital region. That is not going to be the case. It looks like they've backed off on those totals, and that's fine with me because we already have enough snow on the ground. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you for tuning in to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Again, we'll be back tomorrow morning with another live update. Until then, we will talk soon. Take care, everyone.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.